Okay, guys, welcome back to Blake's Games. And before we get into this is the podcast Untouched. And so I have a story or a couple of stories to tell, and maybe you can learn from them, and a few things to explain that I would just want to talk about and, maybe get y'all's thoughts out of it. But, you probably hear the fan in the background. Please try your best to ignore that because I can't edit that out exactly. Not 100%. But, yeah. And do me one favor, ignore the terrible camera quality. This is not the best. And let's get into this. Story number one. So, this is the story of when I was younger in the elementary and I was bullied, but also at the same time, this taught me to be nicer to people because I was rude to a kid who stood up for me. So, not giving out any names, the person who stood up for me, we're going to call him E-Man, and the person who is rude and bullying me, we'll call him Unknown. Okay? So, there was this kid, his name was E-Man, or that wasn't his name, that's his code name, is E-Man, and he was the smart kid out of the class, in other words, the smart ass, everybody called him, and he was quite rude sometimes. So, one day they let us go to PE, and I'm throwing dodgeballs, and I hit Unknown Man in the back of the head with a soft dodgeball. He gets mad, picks me up by the shirt, and throws me on the bleacher. I was 9 years old, okay? I didn't know what to do, so I cried, called me a wimp. But the only person who stood up for me was E-Man. He got up and yelled, "Why did you do that?" or to back off. Something like that. I don't remember exactly, and that was when I was like, oh my god, I've been such an asshole to this guy. Why? And why is he standing up for me? I mean, see, what I learned from this story in my past is that you should always, no matter what, no matter if they're smarter than you, ruder than you, no matter if you have disagreements, that person I disagreed with and didn't like that much was the only person to stand up for me. So you know what they tell you when you're being rude to somebody? What if one day you're on the side of the road and the car just crashed over and on fire, and that guy was the only guy to come and pull you out of the vehicle? Yeah, he was the one to quite literally save your life. So you never know. So rule does apply, like Markiplier says. Treat everybody with respect, and even if you disagree with them or don't like what they see, always respect that person, because one day that person might save your life or give you a piece of advice you never thought you would need. Right? And by the way, a little touchy of a topic here is that parents and kids seem to quite misunderstand each other a lot. Like, the parents, like some who are, I'm strict about this, you got to go by these rules, you got to get this done before you do this. And then the parents, they're like, oh, you can't do it all, I have a job and to take care of y'all. Well, you're kind of making it equal up to that when I'm trying my best to run a job, school, and then chores at home, prepare for tests. I got to prepare for my own future. I can't worry about here and always here. I got to worry about when and how I get there. And not teaching y'all how to parent, and some parents may be actually sitting there and trying to communicate with their kids, but in the wrong way, and the kids seemed to mistake it, right? I see that happen quite a bit, personal experience. It happened. I misunderstood my parents quite a bit, and there is a thing that they tell us, right, that we quite miss, and I didn't understand that until I talked to my dad, and I was like, okay, yeah, he's got a point. It's true, right? Okay, look, what we don't realize as kids is that our actions quite literally do reflect on our parents. Have you ever been in school and you've been the bad kid or the good kid, and they're like, your parents must have raised you right? Quite literally reflects on how your parents raised you and how your parents seem to be. So keep that in mind next time you plan on going outside and knocking off somebody's mailbox with a bat. Okay? And parents also seem to misunderstand the kids a lot when it comes to, like, hey, why don't you go outside and socialize with your friends out there instead? Or why don't you get off the video game or go to this? For some who like to play game and have a strong passion with the career of YouTubing, like I do, and yeah, the parents can be doubtful about it, like you probably won't make it. It's a 1 in a million chance, which honestly is true. But at the same time, shoot your shot. You only got one life. You might as well make the best of it. And you see, instead of giving the kid the confidence that they need, they tear them down because the parent is trying to tell them, I'd rather you take this labor job or this job or that job and be like, you actually make something off of it, you actually make a good living, instead of falling a bad place because of a YouTube channel that didn't do too good, or because you didn't listen. See, the parents trying to show their way of loving through their force and, the way they've learned, but it doesn't always work like that. I'm sorry to say, sometimes you got to be a little bit more soft. You got to be a little bit more communicative back and forth. But and why I'm saying this is I have learned there is sometimes I should have listened to my parents and I chose not to. And an example of that would be when it comes to safety regards, right? Your parents telling you, don't do that, you might fall. No, I won't. I ain't gonna get hurt. That's what we tell ourselves almost every time we get into that argument or debate with our parents. We're like, yeah, I'll be fine, as if I would get hurt. Well, you see, I was quite literally like that as a kid. You see, I was sitting by a fire with my parents, and how everybody used to pour gasoline in the fire to make it spark up and grow bigger faster. Well, they were going to go do that, pour gasoline in a tin can and make a big old fire. Well, I was holding my mom's Coke can and scooting closer to the fire. Hey, Blake, stay back there. You might catch on fire. Nah, I'll be okay. Just want a little bit closer. And scoot a little bit closer, and after that, it ended up in the hospital with a melted can on my face because they poured the gasoline in there and it burst into my face. But from life lesson learned when I was younger, my cousin or uncle, I think it was, he got drunk and we were all swimming this day, and he went to go jump off the top of a cliff into the pond. Underneath the pond was nothing but metal, by the way. And keep in mind, I was about 5'4". I don't remember how old I was, but it grabbed him, a branch as he jumped, or a vine wrapped around his leg, slammed his head against the side of the cliff, and then he fell and drowned. And I sat there as a young kid and saw it all. I even sat there and watched the scuba divers come and dive for his body, but they couldn't find it when the cops pulled up and all that. And quick advice, if anything like this happens, please either rush your kid home or sit them somewhere where they can't see what's going on, because it is a traumatizing memory to hold. It's very traumatizing, and it sucks. And one more thing in today's podcast about untouched topics. One untouched topic specifically towards me is my YouTube channel, right? Let me explain. So, I'm not a big YouTuber, not nowhere near, and I hope one day to be, right? Why do you want to be a YouTuber? What's your main goal as a YouTuber? Well, I want to build a safe community for people who are either anybody, like furries, LGBTQ, Christians, for all of the majority of people to get in and get along, talk to each other. A safe community for everybody to get along, where everybody can fit in and talk and have friends. Because that is something, what inspired me to do this was the YouTubers, Jacksepticeye and Markiplier, for example. For what I mean, not example, for the reason being is because when I fell through my deep stage of depression, and that was after I got left by a girl, I shall admit that. And I done nothing but sat in my room and watched YouTube and ate. I couldn't get myself out to move. I stayed that whole summer inside of my room because I was upset about something. I didn't have the motivation to get up and get moving. So I watched YouTube, and and that was the only thing that kept me going. The entertainment, and Markiplier being empathetic like he is, saying he wished he could be there for us all. Jacksepticeye and Mark also giving you the funnies to smile about, the laughters, the enjoyment. I felt that joy from them, and I wish to spread that on to the rest of y'all. And I guess that will probably be all for today's podcast, but I soon plan on hoping to get a podcast that will be very important to me. I can't promise anything, but I want to do it. So I'll try my best to get around to that. And that will do it for the first podcast of Untouched.